There's a moment, quiet and unassuming, when a man looks at a woman and sees not just beauty, not charm, not even the comfort of affection, but a gravitational pull he cannot explain. It isn't lust, it isn't need. It's something older, something primal and unspoken. And in that moment, he senses something terrifying. He could not walk away from her if he tried. But what is it that gives a woman that kind of power? She may not be the most beautiful in the room. She may not be the most articulate, nor the most outwardly affectionate. Yet there's something, some force that makes her unforgettable. Something that grips a man's soul and whispers, "You've been searching for this your entire life." Here's the contradiction. The modern world teaches you how to be desirable, but not indispensable. You're taught to decorate your surface, but not to descend into the depths of your psyche. You're told to be available, agreeable, likable, yet none of these things ignite obsession. None of them root you in the marrow of a man's being. So the question becomes, how do you become the woman a man cannot live without? Not by force, not by seduction, but by existential necessity? Carl Jung once wrote about anima and animus, the archetypal feminine and masculine, energies that live within each of us. He believed that our attraction to others is not merely emotional or physical, but archetypal. A man is drawn to the woman who mirrors his unconscious soul, who embodies his unlived possibilities. And yet you cannot embody his unconscious until you've wrestled with your own. Most women try to win men through conformity. They mirror his desires, not his depth. They seek love by becoming what the world says is worthy of love. But worthiness, when dictated by culture, is a currency that loses value with every trend. The woman a man can't live without doesn't chase him. She calls him, not with words, but with the gravity of her being. Her silence is more powerful than another woman's flirtation. Her presence more commanding than beauty. Why? Because she has entered herself. She has confronted the shadows Jung speaks of. She has walked through the mythic forest of her own contradictions and emerged, not with answers, but with power. She doesn't make him feel comfortable. She makes him feel alive. And now you must ask yourself, have you been chosen or merely convenient? Do you magnetize from the depth of your soul or from the mimicry of surface desires? Do you evoke admiration or archetypal hunger? What if becoming that woman means you have to give up everything you've been taught to believe about love? What if becoming unforgettable means you must become terrifying? You see, the woman a man can't live without is not safe. She is not tame. She doesn't need validation because she is already haunted by truths most people are too frightened to touch. And when a man meets her, truly meets her, he meets a part of himself he never knew existed. That's why he stays. That's why he orbits. Not because she pleases him, but because she expands him. Not because she fills his needs, but because she reveals them. And still, the paradox holds. She is the one he cannot live without precisely because she never needed him to begin with. So the great question burns like a quiet fire in the corner of your mind. Are you willing to become her? Not to perform her, not to cosplay her, but to become her, from the roots of your psyche to the edge of your being. Because once you do, you won't need to chase love. You'll become the gravitational center of it. But that path begins in a place most are too afraid to go. Number 1. She is rooted in her own myth. She doesn't just live, she narrates. Her life is not a series of disconnected events, but a symbolic journey. While others see heartbreak, she sees initiation. Where others chase goals, she seeks meaning. She understands what Jung called individuation, the path to becoming whole. A man isn't drawn to her for what she does, but for what she represents. She walks through life like a character from an ancient story, full of mystery, transformation, and power. She doesn't need to be understood, because she understands herself so deeply it ripples outward. Number 2. She does not abandon her shadow. The average woman hides her anger, her jealousy, her wildness in the corners of politeness. But the unforgettable woman makes peace with her contradictions. Jung said that shadow is the repressed, the denied, the uncomfortable. She does not run from hers. She dances with it. She allows herself to rage, to mourn, to hunger, and in doing so, she becomes whole. This wholeness gives her presence. She radiates something that cannot be faked. Authenticity. And authenticity, when rooted in depth, is magnetic. Number 3. She holds mystery, not performance. She does not explain herself to be liked. She does not overshare to be relatable. Her mystery is not coyness, it is depth. She speaks with intention, pauses without apology, and lets silence stretch into the space between words. Men lean in, not because she teases, but because she knows something. And it isn't that she hides, it's that she contains. Containment is power. Performance is exhaustion. Number 4, she evokes, not provides. She is not here to meet a man's every need, nor to make his life easier. She is here to awaken him. Where others soothe, she provokes. Not through cruelty, but through clarity. She reflects back to him the parts of himself he cannot see. And in this mirroring, he begins to evolve. That's why he returns, not for comfort, but for expansion. She does not cater. She evokes. Number 5, she holds the tension. Jung spoke of holding the tension of opposites. The ability to sit between paradoxes without collapsing into easy answers. This woman embodies that. She is soft and unyielding, passionate and still, loving and unafraid to walk away. When conflict arises, she does not panic or people please. She holds. And in that holding, she becomes the calm center of a storm, a place a man returns to not because he must, but because nowhere else feels real. Number 6. She speaks from her depths, not her wounds. Pain does not define her. She has suffered, yes, but she has metabolized that suffering into wisdom. She does not use trauma to manipulate nor wear it as identity. She doesn't tell her story to gain sympathy, but to awaken truth in others. Her words carry weight because they are not reactive. They rise from a place that has been scorched and made sacred. Number 7, she chooses, not chases. She does not confuse attention with affection, nor affection with devotion. She does not contort herself to be chosen. She chooses, from a place of fullness, not hunger. A man can feel this. When she looks at him, it is not with desperate hope. It is with discernment. This makes him rise. This makes him question whether he is worthy, not in shame but in aspiration. Her choosing makes him want to become. Number 8. She embodies erotic innocence, not naivety, not manipulation. Innocence, the freshness of experience, the willingness to feel deeply, to touch the sacred through intimacy. She is both flame and stillness. Her sensuality is not for show, it is an extension of her soul. A man does not just want her body, he wants to enter her world. Number 9, she transcends the culture. While others parrot trends and opinions, she speaks in a voice that feels ancient. She has tasted solitude, philosophy, silence. She is not seduced by the moment's noise. Her tastes are timeless, her style unbending. In a world of mimicry, she is an original, and nothing captivates more than that. Number 10. She demands presence, not promises. She is not swayed by words. She doesn't believe in potential, only in embodiment. You can't charm her with future plans or poetic confessions. She reads energy, not intention. When a man is with her, he must arrive fully, or she will disappear like a dream upon waking. Her standard is not negotiation, it is being. Number 11. She mothers her inner child, not her man. She does not collapse into caretaker roles to gain love. She does not absorb his chaos to prove her worth. Her nurturing is sacred, not sacrificial. Because she has healed the child within, she does not seek to parent her partner. She meets him as an equal, and that equality becomes the gateway to intimacy, not codependence. Number 12. She walks with death in her eyes. Not morbidity, awareness. She knows all things end, and because of that, she lives fiercely, speaks honestly, and loves without clinging. She has buried dreams, lovers, identities. She has been reborn, and when a man looks into her eyes, he sees this. She does not need him. But if she chooses to walk beside him, it is real, it is rare, it is reverent. These traits are not hacks. They are initiations. They are not learned. They are earned through inner fire, solitude, and radical honesty. And now that you know them, you face a deeper question still. What stands in the way of embodying this archetype? To answer that, we must go deeper, not into action, but into origin, into the hidden architecture of the female psyche, and the invisible forces that have been shaping your desires, your fears, and your identity for longer than you've been aware. It begins long before you ever chose to be agreeable, before you learned how to smile when uncomfortable, before you shrank your voice in the face of disapproval. It begins in the invisible inheritance passed from generation to generation, the silent contract, written in the nervous system of every girl who grows up learning that being chosen is safer than being true. What Carl Jung called the collective unconscious is not an abstract theory. It is a living presence. It pulses through myths, religions, media, family systems, and within it, the image of woman has been carved not by women themselves, but by the projections of men, religions, and patriarchal societies. Woman as nurturer, woman as temptation, woman as Madonna or whore, woman as beautiful, but never whole. You were not born into a vacuum. You were born into this myth, and it has shaped you. Jung spoke of archetypes, primordial patterns that live in all humans. But when an archetype becomes distorted, it becomes a prison. You were handed not the archetype of the full feminine, but a sliver of it. You were taught to suppress your Lilith and exaggerate your Eve. You were praised for sacrifice, punished for sovereignty. You learned that love was earned through self-erasure, that a good woman is quiet, pleasing, passive, that to be powerful is to be alone. This is the wound, not yours alone, but inherited. Jung called it the repression of the feminine unconscious. Nietzsche called it the crushing of the Dionysian. Sartre would say you were turned into object, a being for others. You became a role, not a soul, and so you began to perform. You crafted a persona, what Jung called the mask of adaptation. You smiled when you didn't want to. You gave when you were empty. You seduced with your body because your voice was not safe. You sought approval like water, because to be rejected felt like death. But it wasn't love you were chasing. It was survival. This is where it gets darker. Modern society has weaponized this insecurity. Capitalism thrives on your inadequacy. You are bombarded with images of worthiness, defined by consumption. The perfect body, the perfect skin care, the perfect performance of femininity. You are taught to curate a life, not live one. Every scroll whispers the same lie. You are not enough, but you could be. If only you buy this, follow this, become this. You've become both the prisoner and the prison guard. You self-monitor, you shrink your laughter, you edit your stories, you question your own anger. You convince yourself that if you can just be good enough, someone will finally see you. But they don't see you. They see the mask, because that's what you're showing. This is the hidden problem. You've been taught to gain love by abandoning your soul. And now, you don't know who you are without the performance. Arthur Schopenhauer once wrote that, "Every man takes the limits of his own field of vision for the limits of the world." Most women live inside a field of vision defined by invisible rules. And what is most sinister is how normal it all feels. You don't question it. You adapt to it. And eventually you forget that another reality was even possible. But the psyche does not forget. Inside you, the feminine archetype rages to be remembered. Not just the lover or the mother, but the wild woman, the sorceress, the philosopher, the destroyer of illusions. You catch glimpses of her in dreams, in moments of wild laughter, in sudden clarity during solitude. But then you retreat, because to become her would require breaking the entire structure of your identity. Jung believed that neurosis is often the result of a soul demanding transformation and a personality resisting it. You feel the ache. You feel the restlessness. You read the books, follow the pages, whisper affirmations, but you're still tired, still unsure, because the problem isn't your effort. The problem is the lie underneath your effort. You don't need to become better. You need to become real. But here's the terrifying truth. To be real, you must confront the false self you've invested your entire life into becoming. You must kill the persona. You must strip away every layer built for approval and face the raw, quivering essence underneath. The part of you that remembers who you were before the world told you who to be. This is the psychological death, the ego death, the place every mystic, philosopher, and depth psychologist has pointed toward. Viktor Frankl called it the defiant power of the human spirit. Nietzsche, the will to power. Jung, the path of individuation. You are not here to please. You are here to become. But you cannot become until you unlearn the mythology of submission. The woman a man cannot live without does not arise from perfection. She is born in fire, in solitude, in rebellion. She exists beyond the reach of conditioning because she has seen through it. But this clarity doesn't arrive gently. It rips through illusions. It breaks the bones of the false self. And it leaves you standing naked in the mirror, asking, if I were no longer trying to be loved, who would I be? That question is not rhetorical, because it is the doorway, and what lies beyond it is not safety, but sovereignty. To understand the cost of staying asleep, we must now uncover what happens when this hidden problem goes unchallenged. There is a peculiar kind of suffering that doesn't scream. It doesn't bleed in public or collapse in the street. It moves in quiet rhythms, in strained smiles, in scrolling habits, in subtle panic when the phone is too quiet. It lives in the body like static, a hum of disconnection. You've felt it. This suffering doesn't come from being unloved. It comes from being unseen, not by the world, by yourself. And yet it continues, because what is invisible cannot be challenged. You don't notice that you're starving for something you've never tasted. You only feel the ache, the flatness, the low-grade depression you can't explain. The man beside you loves your performance, but deep down, you know, it's not you he's holding. It's the version of you that plays well to his expectations. And this is the first unseen consequence. You vanish in your own life. You become the character written by someone else's hand. You say the right things, wear the right smile, nod at the right moments. But behind your eyes is a growing silence, a part of you that knows you are not living, only rehearsing. Jung called this the loss of soul, not in the spiritual sense, but in the psychological, the dissociation from your authentic self. This disconnection breeds something sinister, resentment, but not toward others, toward yourself, because deep down, you know you traded truth for validation, and the cost is unbearable. Then comes the second consequence. You begin to attract reflections, not relationships. If you perform passivity, you attract dominance. If you perform selflessness, you attract neediness. If you perform confidence, but haven't earned it through shadow work, you attract masks just like yours. People respond not to your soul, but to the signal your persona emits. And slowly, intimacy becomes impossible. You can't be loved if you are not seen. You can't be seen if you're not real. The third consequence is deeper still. Your nervous system becomes trained to fear authenticity because you've associated honesty with rejection, expression with punishment. You flinch from your own desires. You second-guess your boundaries. You apologize for existing too loudly. Over time, your body forgets what safety feels like. You live in a state of subtle defense, always performing, never arriving. This constant performance activates your default mode network, the part of your brain responsible for internal narrative, social comparison, and self-monitoring. It's the birthplace of rumination, of looping thoughts, of imagined judgment, and it is overactive in those who have learned to seek safety through self-censorship. In other words, your own mind becomes a surveillance state. You are watched by an internal audience that never claps, and this shapes not just your thoughts, but your identity. Jean-Paul Sartre wrote about this. He called it bad faith, when a person lies to themselves in order to avoid the responsibility of freedom. You play the role of the good woman, not because it fits, but because it's easier than risking rejection. But the price of this convenience is existential despair. You are not depressed because your life is hard. You are depressed because your life is false, and society rewards you for it. That's the fourth consequence. You are applauded for your own disappearance. You are told you're so easygoing, so sweet, so supportive. But none of those things are real unless they're chosen. When they are default modes of survival, they become masks. You get promoted at work for being accommodating. You are liked at parties for being agreeable. You are praised in relationships for being non-confrontational. And every compliment feels like an accusation. Because inside, you know, they're not talking about you. They're talking about the persona you've expertly constructed. Fifth, your creativity dies. True creativity does not come from control. It comes from surrender, from chaos, from emotion. But when you spend your life suppressing emotion to be palatable, you lose access to that inner fire. Your ideas become recycled. Your passions become performative. You lose your erotic pulse, what Jung called the numinous, the sense of aliveness that brings color to existence. Eventually, even your love becomes mechanical. You say, "I love you," but what you mean is, please don't leave. You kiss, but it's a habit. You give, but it's a transaction. There is no soul in the motion, only memory. The final, most devastating consequence: you forget that anything else was ever possible. Your dreams become smaller. Your desires dull. You start calling numbness peace. You mistake distraction for joy. And when someone asks how you are, you smile reflexively and say, fine, because you don't remember what not fine would even feel like anymore. This is how the lie wins, not through violence, through slow erosion. You don't wake up one day and realize your life has become a script. You drift into it, line by line, smile by smile, until one day, you look in the mirror and see someone who has your eyes but not your soul. But here is the rupture. You feel this. That's why you're here. That's why you're still reading. Something inside you has not died. Something ancient is still awake, whispering that this isn't it, that you were never meant to be ornamental. You were meant to be oracular. And so the moment arrives, the edge of rebellion, the precipice of truth. You can continue performing, or you can become mythic. You can maintain the image, or you can reclaim your soul. But first, you must unlearn everything you were told about how to be lovable. There is no ceremony, no trumpet blast announcing your transformation. Only the silent ache of a woman who wakes up one morning and decides, enough. Enough of living in fragments. Enough of performing desire instead of feeling it. Enough of shrinking, softening, censoring, waiting. The rebellion doesn't start loud. It starts inward, quietly, but with terrifying honesty. You don't become the woman he can't live without by adding more layers. You become her by shedding the ones that were never yours. This is the paradox. Liberation isn't becoming more. It's becoming less of what you're not. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the path of integrating your unconscious self, your shadow, your archetypal blueprint. But individuation is not healing. It is becoming, and becoming is violent to the false self. The rebellion begins when you stop asking how to be loved and start asking, who am I when I'm not performing for love? This question is nuclear, and to answer it, you must be willing to set fire to the structures that once protected you, your people-pleasing, your validation loops, your strategic femininity. Every survival strategy that once earned approval must now be examined not for what it gave you, but for what it cost. Because the woman you're becoming doesn't just want to be seen. She wants to be mirrored by life itself, not with flowers and dates, but with truth, with presence, with awe. And awe cannot find a woman who is still hiding. So where do you begin? Step 1. You embrace solitude like an altar. You stop filling your emptiness with entertainment, attention, or codependent energy exchanges. You sit in the discomfort, the silence. You stop asking others who you are and let the question echo in your chest until the answer comes not in words, but in knowing. Nietzsche once wrote, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. Solitude is not loneliness, it is a return to source. You learn to be with yourself so completely that you become immune to half-love." Step 2. You make your shadow your mentor. You stop apologizing for your rage, your ambition, your erotic power, your jealousy, your depth. These are not flaws. These are invitations. You stop trying to become a version of the divine, feminine that is soft and submissive, and spiritualized. Instead, you reclaim your wholeness. Schopenhauer said, "Compassion is the basis of morality, but self-compassion is the beginning of power." You look at the darkest parts of yourself and say, I see you. I choose you. I'll never abandon you again. Step 3. You speak only what is true. You break your addiction to approval by saying the thing you're most afraid to say. Even if your voice shakes, even if your hands tremble. You say no when you mean no. You say I want without guilt. You say I'm not okay without needing to soften the truth for someone else's comfort. This is not cruelty. This is clarity, and clarity is magnetic. Step 4. You reclaim your erotic self as sacred. You stop performing sex as a currency for connection. You stop offering your body in exchange for safety. You learn that Eros is not just about pleasure. It's about presence. You bring your soul into the bedroom. You let your sensuality arise not from expectation, but from embodiment. Aldous Huxley wrote of the doors of perception. Your body is one of those doors. When you reclaim it, you begin to experience life in full color. You stop seeking love from men who cannot meet your depth because you finally know your own worth, not intellectually, but somatically. Step 5. You surround yourself with mirrors, not masks. You walk away from anyone who only loves the version of you that plays small. You stop trying to convince, explain, or educate people into seeing your truth. You don't need to be understood by everyone. You need to be witnessed by those who are also becoming. Jean-Paul Sartre believed that existence precedes essence. This means your essence is not found in belonging to others. It's found in choosing yourself again and again until the world adjusts. Step 6. You replace control with trust. You stop micromanaging your life to avoid pain. You stop chasing people, fixing situations, forcing outcomes. You realize that true power is not domination. It's surrender, not the passive kind, but the sacred kind. The kind that says, I trust myself to hold whatever life gives me, even heartbreak. This is the death of the nice girl and the birth of the wild woman, because the woman a man cannot live without is not the one who never leaves. It is the one who could and chooses not to. She stays not because she fears loneliness. She stays because the space she holds is worthy of her soul. This is not about becoming irresistible. It's about becoming uncompromisingly real. And in your realness, you become rare. Rare enough that no man, no matter how powerful or distant, forgets your name once it's been whispered through his psyche. You don't fight for love. You become it. You don't chase. You attract, not through manipulation, but through magnetism. And magnetism is the natural result of embodiment. You have not been abandoned. You've been misdirected. And now you remember. This is your rebellion. Not loud, but absolute. Because the ultimate power is not being needed. It's being chosen by yourself first. And now at the edge of everything, the final truth waits. The insight so devastatingly clear, so existentially potent, that it changes not just how you see men or love, or even yourself, but how you see reality itself. Are you ready to see it? There is a moment, brief, eternal, when you stop seeking, and something inside you stops running. The performance drops, the effort dissolves. You no longer twist yourself into metaphors you don't believe in, or chase closure from people who never had the tools to hold you. You stop asking, what must I do to be loved? And begin asking something far more dangerous. What am I with nothing to prove? That question will dismantle your entire identity. Because the final truth is not a secret strategy. It is not a step-by-step system. It is a confrontation. The woman a man can't live without does not exist. She is not a role, not an aesthetic, not even an archetype you can imitate. She is not built from the outside in, but from the inside out. And the paradox is this: she only becomes real when you stop trying to be her, because she is you, without your fear, without your apology, without your conditioning, without the inner chains that taught you your value is transactional. You've spent so long asking how to earn love that you've forgotten what love is. Carl Jung warned, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not what pleases others, not what makes men stay. Who you are, beneath the trauma, beneath the persona, beneath the endless modifications of your soul." That truth is terrifying because it comes with nothing to hide behind. You are left bare, uncertain, without performance. And in that nakedness, you discover something that was never promised to you in childhood, or school, or society. You are already enough, but not enough in the way magazines and therapists tell you. Not the soft, sanitized version of empowerment. You are enough because you are a force of nature, a phenomenon, not a personality, a woman who has stared into the abyss of her loneliness, her longing, her silence, and didn't look away. You become unforgettable not because you mastered seduction, but because you stopped seducing altogether. You stopped trying to convince someone to love you. You stopped dancing for a gaze that never truly saw you. You let yourself be ordinary, ugly, awkward, divine, and in that surrender you became holy. This is the haunting truth. The woman a man cannot live without is not the one who captures his attention, but the one who disrupts his entire worldview. She reflects to him what he's afraid to face, what he's longed to find, what he buried to survive. She isn't easy to be with. She's necessary to become. But here's the tragedy. Most men are not ready. They confuse their discomfort for incompatibility. They run from the mirror and say, "She's too much." But they never forget her, because she revealed them to themselves. And most women? They retreat at the first sign of rejection. They betray their truth just to be kept. But not you. Not anymore. Because here's what you now understand. Being unforgettable to a man is not the goal. The goal is to become unforgettable to yourself. You become the woman he can't live without the moment you can live without him, not out of bitterness, but from truth, from embodiment, from the place inside you that remembers. You were never meant to orbit around someone else's hunger. You were meant to stand in the center of your own becoming. That's the real power. That's the final truth. You do not exist to be loved. You exist to be love. Wild, terrifying, radiant, uncontainable. And when you embody that, fully, unapologetically, without strategy or shame, some will walk away. Let them. You are no longer performing in a play for other people's projections. You are writing your own myth. And in that myth, you are not the maiden. You are the fire. So now ask yourself, will you go back to shrinking, softening, silencing, to be held by someone who only wants your fragments? Or will you stay vast? Will you stay sacred? Will you stay whole? Because the woman he can't live without is simply the woman who never needed to become anyone but herself. And that woman? She doesn't chase. She doesn't perform. She remembers. And now that you remember too, there's no going back.